Hello and welcome back to my channel, where today there will be, in fact, many spoilers ahead as I give you my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. Now, I am a huge fan of this series. In fact, the film school that I'm currently at, probably was influenced to go mostly because it's where the Duffer Brothers went, and there was a huge sign when I first visited the school that said Proud Alumni with a huge poster. I've loved this show since I first saw it. I rewatched all 3 seasons to get ready for this one. What I love about this show is that it constantly reinvents itself. You see that so clearly here because this is such a different type of season than any of the ones that have come before. And I think that's what keeps this show fresh and alive. It's so involved, using all of the characters in such engaging plot lines and really allowing these actors to explore such wonderful subtleties and dimensions to these characters. This season was very much inspired by 80s horror, and the way they executed a lot of the horror sequences was thrilling. I really loved how Vecna really just took his prey and twisted all their limbs and tore their jaws off. And the scene with Fred when he was looking at the car fire, I loved how he used their fears. It was very reminiscent of It, which I'm a big fan of. And I think that's what's great, because in past seasons, other Upside Down villains haven't necessarily used these tactics visually, which makes Vecna so distinct. And let's talk about Vecna, because he is one hell of a villain. I think the series really needed a humanoid villain to represent the Upside Down, because the Mind Flayer was just too expansive, too large an entity to connect with as a villain, and the Demogorgon was easily taken care of in season 1. So I think the introduction of Vecna was really compelling and very just terrifying. His first scene, really, when we get a good look at him at the end of episode 1 with Chrissy's death, was just terrifying. The creature design is so cool, and when you learn about his backstory, it just gave so much more depth to the overall mythos of Stranger Things. And that's what I really love about this season, is that it answers questions that you didn't even know to ask. So much of this season is set building up, I think, to what's to come. It definitely feels like a mixture between Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and Avengers Infinity War, where Half-Blood Prince, of course, in that penultimate chapter in the Harry Potter series, was mostly about going into flashbacks, trying to figure out the villain and trying to figure out his origin, what he means to accomplish, of course, finding out what happened with Voldemort as a child. And we get a lot of that through 11, trying to discover, we weren't necessarily thinking it was Vecna when we started this. More on that in a second. 11 goes in to discover the origin of 1 and the beginning of Dr. Brenner's scientific experiments that led to 11. And then we also realized that 1 ended up turning into be Vecna because of 11. So all of that was really engaging, and it was really thrilling because, again, it was such a well-told mystery. You weren't necessarily predicting where it goes. I mean, my family and I were watching it like we were solving the mystery themselves. We were yelling at the TV every time we had a half-baked theory, but we were pretty good. I think I had an idea that Victor Creel's son was 1 based on him describing him as a sensitive boy or a sensitive child, and then I had a feeling that Jamie Campbell-Bower could be 1, but I also had a feeling that he could be Vecna based on some of those evil stares that he did before he gave that epic monologue. And I just didn't connect them all together that, oh, okay, so all of these theories are correct. So I was pretty good. At predicting it, but still, it still shocked me and surprised me, and I still think the way they told the story was really effective. There's a great brutality in his carnage, and I think that is what has been able to extend the stakes over the season. The weight of the stakes has improved, and the writers know how to increase tension without seeming outlandish, without seeming like they've jumped the shark. It seemed very believable what Vecna was doing, and it didn't seem like we were just completely going off the rails in terms of what's happening. And I think a great way that they were able to maintain that was finally involving the parents. The town of Hawkins is getting fed up, and the parents themselves were involved in trying to figure out what's happening with the kids. It was a small part of the season, but I really appreciated it because that has always been one of our questions, is how is the parents not paying attention and allowing their kids days on end to go fight these upside down monsters, and they're just sitting back at the pool relaxing. I really love this. I hope they bring them back more. But honestly, my family were on the edge of our seat in a desperate attempt to get answers. Sometimes this season was quite infuriating because it was holding all of the answers hostage until that final episode 7, the Massacre at Hawkins Lap. And that was an incredible episode. I loved how Nancy and the crew in the Upside Down, just that whole section when the teenagers were able to go into the Upside Down, was so riveting. I loved it so much. But seeing how they were able to mess with the lights was really cool. I picked up on the detail right before they said it that the journal said November 6, 1983, which is, of course, the day that Will Byers went missing. And so that's a really cool idea that the Upside Down plays with time. I've always had an idea that maybe that was a possibility. I thought it could have been the future, but this seems to be that it's stuck in the past. So exploring why that's the case is really interesting. Of course, November 6, 1983, we've never gotten full confirmation on when 11 left Hawkins Lab, when she escaped. It could have been the same day. So that could also be why it froze in time, maybe when 11 left, or maybe that's when the gate was open. We don't know. The shot when all of them are biking in the real world and then it pans up to the Upside Down and the 4 teenagers are biking. I mean, there's shots like that they capture a nostalgia for Amblin and Spielberg and those type of films from the 80s and 90s. But also they're just so inventive and creative that they feel distinctly Stranger Things. They feel distinctly from the Duffer Brothers' minds. And hats off to them because they've been able to grow this show into something I don't think anybody was expecting. When I look back on season 1, it just seems so small now compared to how massive and expansive this show has become. And they are really just such masterful storytellers in how they are able to take all these characters and really just put them on a storyline that involves them, that engages us. It's just really masterful work, and I cannot wait to see what they do at the end of this season, which basically they're giving us 2 movies here, and then, of course, the final season 5. I mean, I said this with season 3. What I love about it is that if you had asked me what I thought the show was going to end overall, I would have told you I thought it would end how season 3 ends, with Hopper'S death and everybody emotional and moving away. And that's what I really loved about it, is it opened up the show and it allowed season 4 to be something completely different. And I think they definitely capitalize on that. We don't see them all reunite in this season 4. And I highly suspect we might not see them reunite in the end of season 4 in volume 2 either. We'll see. I mean, we got about 4 hours left of the season, so it's potential. I really love how this season really breaks free. And I think that's what also I'm looking forward to season 5, is I have no idea where it's going. It's one of the few stories in this big medium, one of these big projects that isn't predictable. And I think that's because the Duffer Brothers really have created such unlimited possibilities for their story, and they continue to surprise us. I feel like this is one of the more genuine franchises that are able to surprise us genuinely. Except for the Russia storyline, I think everybody is contributing to the same narrative, and I think that's what allows this story to work so well. It doesn't feel that isolated because everybody is connected. The California storyline, I think, is a little loose right now, but I think that's because they are going to probably figure more into the final 2 episodes when they do find 11, and maybe things happen when they go back to Hawkins. I think that right now, and we can get into that now, some of my minute flaws about the season, I do think that some of the characters were benched. And I think that was definitely the California storyline, if your name wasn't Argyle, and the Russia storyline. I definitely feel like these characters were spinning their wheels while we did the more important work with the Hawkins and 11 storyline. The California stuff just feels like these characters either have stuff that they're waiting to do in volume 2, and they kind of just had to wait until they were required by the story, or these characters just are lost. I think Jonathan has been lost a little bit. I think the moment that he got with Nancy in season 2, that character lost a little bit to him, because he was a character in season 1 that I think was all about discovering his own independence. He was so tied to his mother and his brother that when his brother went missing, he really didn't have an identity. He didn't have any form of self outside of his home. So it's unfortunate that he's just seemed to latch himself onto other characters, when I know the actor and the character has more potential. And as far as Mike and Will, there's a juicy storyline coming between them. I think Will's got a secret, and he's gonna tell. I think many people think he has this secret, and we've been waiting for him to tell it for some time, and I think that's gonna happen. I don't know if it's gonna happen in season 4. I mean, we got some time, and that's the other thing. I don't know if Vecna is gonna be killed this season. I think that's definitely a showdown that's coming, but I think that he may last till the end of season 5. So we may have time for the Will's juicy secret, and if that's the case, then I think Mike and Will are going to have some meaty storyline. I liked with Will's monologue about being afraid to tell somebody how you truly feel. I thought the whole from Mike, love Mike scene was great, and the conversations about am I a monster or a superhero, and then how Brenner interjects and saying it's something in between. I like this idea because I think in classic genre stories and these pulp stories that, of course, Stranger Things is inspired from, there's such clear delineations between good and evil because we desire such clarity in our heroes. I love the conversations about whether the character is the curse. Eleven thinks that she's the curse. Hopper said that he's the curse. And the episode 2 was called Vecna's Curse. And I think that's a really interesting way to talk about your characters. It gives them more dimension because they understand the flaws within them, and those flaws are contributing to their actions in the present. And speaking of Hopper, let's talk about the Russia storyline because this felt like padding. And I thought it was so unfortunate for these actors because they really weren't given anything to do. I think this whole storyline took away a lot of agency from Hopper because there wasn't a lot interesting being done with them. And to save for one monologue where Hopper talks about his involvement in the Vietnam War and Agent Orange, and then that he thinks contributing to the death of his daughter. Besides that, the whole prison storyline wasn't really given that much attention or depth. And then unfortunately, I think the biggest misstep was to allow Murray to go as crazy and free as he was allowed to go. I'm a fan of Brett Gelman. I think he's been a lot of fun in past seasons. Not only was his tone off because I think that he was so funny that it was taking a lot of the tension out of the Russia storyline, but he really sidelined Joyce Byers. Winona Ryder is a fantastic actor, and she has proven herself time and time again in this series. And it's really upsetting that she was sidelined to such a degree, especially because this is another character like her son Jonathan, and kind of like Will. I think all the Byers need to kind of stay protected, maybe get on a family group chat and tell the Duffers, don't take advantage of us. She's another character that after attaching herself to her family and then to Bob, she is a character who really is searching for independence. And I would have loved if maybe she asked Murray for help in terms of decoding the magazine cutout message that she got and maybe tracing the call to Enzo. I would have loved if he was there for that, but then she went on her own to Russia. I think that would have made it a little bit better because it would have just kept the story focused on Joyce and Hopper, which I think is what that story should have been focused on. Instead, it became the Murray show, and Murray's not a character that has a lot of depth and complexity. He's just there for comic relief. And I understand the need to give comic relief and that the other storylines maybe needed a balance. But you have people like Dustin and Steve, Eddie, a lot of great new additions. Robin was very funny here. So you had a lot of funny characters and other sequences that I don't think you needed Murray at the level that he was at. Now, the series, of course, has always been paced well. That is the case here, even with these supersized episodes. Though at points, I definitely felt like the Duffer Brothers had a checklist for this season, and they were just trying to check them as fast as they could. There was a lot of backstory that went into this season, and I think it probably will play better when we see the full season, because that was something that was interesting about, like, my aunt, when we were watching it, was talking about how, like, she felt it took a little longer to get into the story here. But I'm like, yeah, but this is a much longer story than past seasons, so maybe that was why. But even so, we're not even done the season yet. So I think in terms of pacing and how much backstory there is, I think it's potential that we're going to get as much of a payoff as we have in past seasons. It's just we haven't reached it yet. But I will say this, there are a lot of characters in here. A lot of them shine, and that's the charm of the actors. But I definitely think that the Duffers could be a little bit more efficient in whose story we're following. As I've already said, I think Murray needed to be taken down. I don't think he should have even gotten on the plane to Alaska. I think the diversion to Susie was more just to give that crew something to do, and it wasn't really necessary for her to be in this story. I'm fine with her being just a little bit at the end of season 3, sing your Never-Ending Story song, and then she can even have the little cameo she did at the beginning when she changed Dustin's grade in the school portal. That was a fun scene. But I don't need her to now become a regular. And no disrespect to the actor, it's just we have so many characters here. As I said, this very much felt like Stranger Things Infinity War, where we splintered the cast, the massive cast, and we were able to give each one a really shining moment. But I think what we're desperately in need of now is Stranger Things Endgame, where we bring down the cast and allow a more focused thematic narrative. I do think that having these characters have more moments like Hopper's monologue is crucial, especially as we reach the end of the story. And I think we're in need of some characters to die. I think some characters are going to need to bite the dust or walk off into the sunset, because at some point we got to start losing people, and they can't just be people like Barb or Billy. Like, we got to lose some heavyweights. Some people from our main crew are going to have to go. But still, I think that this is still a bold, thrilling mystery. I think this takes Stranger Things in a lot of new directions while still keeping it clear in its central ethos, and it's something that I cannot wait to revisit in Volume 2 in just a couple short weeks. So that's my review of Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the season, as well as some of your favorite characters, or who has the best hair in Stranger Things. I mean, Eddie and Argyle, some new additions, really challenged Steve the Hair Harrington. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to not miss any new videos from Spoilers Ahead with Anthony Post. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you at the movies.